How is everyone doing today? Good. You're here to learn something? Oh, good, I hope so. All right. I know a couple of you, but for those of you who I've not met, at least in person recently, my name is Ron Ricard. I work for a company called Investment Property Exchange, or IPX 1031. We help you do what are called 1031 exchanges. So, how many people in this room have experience with 1031 exchanges?
Just once.
Even though, how long have I known you? Okay. All right. How many people are relatively new to real estate, or at least in this area? Most of you. Okay. Sounds like you're new to real estate in California, at least.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. So you guys are all relatively new. Fantastic. Since we have a small enough group, I'm just going to go ahead and ask the question: how long have you been a realtor, and which brokerage do you work with?
Old banker, and just for a couple of years.
Okay.
I'm with Realty One, couple of months.
Okay. Real new.
I'm with Christy Serena Willow Glen. I'm about 2 months.
Got it. I just spoke at your office earlier this year before you got there.
I'm with Keller Williams, Gilmer,
Okay. Good.
and the 1.5 years.
Fantastic.
Century 21.
Yep. Okay. Fantastic.
2 months, so we may be same time we're passing the test.
Probably. All right. So let's get started. What I'm going to do today, I'm going to talk about 1031 exchanges. I'm going to talk about how to use them, why people use them. I'm going to talk about parts of 1031 that most people don't realize how you can use exchanges. Again, we're going to make it very interactive, ask questions. Usually I talk about 40, 45 minutes. If you have lots of questions, we hopefully may go the whole hour, but we're here to mostly want to get you educated. All right. So let's start at the beginning. 1031. 1031 refers to a section of the tax code. It's a section of the tax code that says when you own real property that you use for business or investment, you can sell that asset, buy what's called a like-kind asset, which I'll define in a minute. And as long as you follow the rules of the 1031, you get to defer paying taxes on the profit that you've made. So what does that mean in English? Your client has a rental house. They've been renting here for the last 20 years. They're sick of it. They want to sell that and buy a fourplex. So you list the property. You go through the regular sales process. At the close of escrow, the money comes to a third party called the intermediary company like ours. You then go help them find that duplex or that fourplex they want to go buy. We send the money to the title company there, and the property closes. In the eyes of the IRS, they sold a piece of investment real estate, and they bought a piece of investment real estate. And because they didn't touch the money, because we had it, they get to defer paying taxes on the profit that they've made. Now, important word there, defer, not eliminate. Okay, so if you exchange property A for property B, a few years later you exchange property B for property C, now you're old and tired and cranky and say, the hell with real estate, I'm just selling it. You pay taxes from A and B and C, so you are just deferring the taxes. Now, sometimes people will ask, why bother? Why bother doing an exchange if I'm going to have to pay the taxes anyway? There are two reasons we always want to encourage our clients to do an exchange. Number one, do you want to pay your taxes today or tomorrow? Tomorrow is the right answer. The way I look at it is this. It's interactive. I'm going to ask questions. I want answers. The way I look at it is this. If you make $1 million of profit on a property, you're going to have to pay at least $300,000 in taxes. What would you rather do? Give $300,000 to the government or use it yourself to buy more real estate? For most of us, as we want to use it ourselves, we don't want to give money to the government. And so that's the first reason. But the real reason you do the exchange is, when do you really want to pay your taxes? Never is the right answer. And guess what? You don't have to. Because sadly, one day, we're all going to die. And when you die, you win. Well, I'll be honest, when you die, your children win. Because when you die, your heirs get what's called a step up in basis. This is very important, and make sure we understand this. I bought a property many, many years ago for $100,000. Today it's worth $1 million. If I sell it, I have a $900,000 gain to pay taxes on. But the day I die, whoever inherits the property, their basis on the property is the value of the property at my time of death. And so if your kids are like mine, the day after my funeral, they're selling all my real estate. So when they inherit it for $1 million, how much capital gain do they have to pay? Zero. It's worth $1 million when I die. That becomes their basis. If they sell it right away, they have no gain. All the taxes I would pay while I was alive all disappear when I die. That's the real beauty of the 1031. Now, important thing here. This does not work if you gift real estate to somebody. It only works if they inherit it. And the reason I point this out is that it is very common, especially if you are working with people who were born in other countries. Because in other countries, it's very common to give the real estate to your kids before you die, or to add your children to title on the property before you die, so that they inherit it much faster. The way our tax code is written, that's almost always a bad idea. It's much, much better for them to inherit the property, get that step up in basis, and all the taxes disappear. Whereas if you give them the property, you're giving them your tax bill. You're giving them the tax situation. Okay, so that's the real beauty of the 1031. That's why the motto of our industry is swap till you drop. You just keep exchanging, and whoever dies with the most real estate wins. Okay? All right. Now there's a term. Please, yes.
What if there are 5 kids?
Yes.
So
What about that? Okay, there are 5 kids, yes?
this is a true story. 5 kids. Then what?
Well, okay, first off, it depends how the inheritance is set up. Okay? Now,
That should work.
Thank you. Yeah. Hey, this has happened to them before. I know that. That's why they always have a battery backup. Okay. We're okay. So when it comes to dying, you can either die with a trust, with a will, or with nothing. But what happens is, if you have a will or a trust, or even nothing, ultimately the assets will get passed down to the heirs. Now, if the trust specifically says everyone gets 1/5, you have 5 kids, everyone gets 1/5 of everything, then yes, everyone gets 1/5 of that property. But whoever inherits it still gets the step up in basis. Now, what a lot of people do is they don't want to give 1/5 of all their assets, so they go, well, she gets one property, he gets another property, she may get a third, and he gets the stocks or whatever. However you decide in your will or your trust to divide it among your children or your heirs, whoever you're going to give it to, that's up to you to have set up ahead of time. But whoever does inherit it, then they get that step up in basis. Now, I do want to point out another thing. That step up in basis is based on at the time of death. And the reason I point that out is that if you die with a will, it could take 2 years or more before it actually gets to the heirs. And if you die with no will or no trust, it could take 5 years easily before it actually makes it into the names of the heirs. And so by that time they get it, there may already be a gain in the property because it's based on the time when I died, not when they actually inherit the property. So that's why I always say having a trust is very important if you own real estate, because you can pass it on to your heirs very quickly, and that way everyone knows exactly what to do, what they want to do with that property. So anyway, any more questions about dying?
So building on her question,
Yes.
there are 5 kids. If each one of them will have the basis.
Each one of them, whatever they inherit, will get that step up in basis. So if there is one property that they inherit, and each one owns 1/5 of that property, then each one will get a step up for that 1/5 of the property. So what's going to happen at that point? Usually, if you have lots of kids owning a property, what ends up happening is they usually just sell the property. But again, because they got that step up, nobody has to pay taxes on it.
When they sell it, then they have to pay the tax.
When they sell it, depends if there's any gain. Okay. Again, if they get that step up, so if they sell it, if it's worth $1 million when they die, they each own 1/5 of that property, and they sell it for $1 million, there is no gain. That gain all disappears. Again, this is different in our country than other countries. That way, our country has this tax code designed for estates. That step up in basis is very critical, and most countries do not have that. Okay. All right. So yes, please.
What happens with a down exchange? Say you exchange $1 million property for five $200,000 properties, then have to sell one of the 200K properties.
So if you sell one and buy five, your basis gets prorated among the five. So each one still becomes a standalone property at that time, and then each one has its own amount of gain allocated to it. We'll actually talk about a little bit more about that in a little bit. All right, so there's a term I used in the beginning. That term is like kind. What you buy and what you sell have to be like kind. That's a very misleading term, and I do not recommend anybody use it. Even though you'll talk to a lot of accountants or attorneys, they like using that term. The reason I don't think it's important anymore is because it's very misleading. Any kind of real estate could be exchanged with any other kind of investment real estate. So you can sell a rental house and buy a shopping center. You can sell a farm and buy an apartment building. You could even sell bare land and buy a duplex. Any kind of investment real estate for any other kind, anywhere in the country. So it's much, much more flexible than most people think.
Commercial can only be exchanged with commercial and residential can be.
No, it is not commercial for commercial or residential for residential. You can sell residential and buy commercial. You can sell commercial and buy farmland. You can sell industrial and buy residential. Any kind of investment real estate for any other kind. The reason we call it like kind is because we used to do things on exchanges that were not real estate. So in my 25 years of doing this, when someone sold an airplane, I did exchanges for a guy who sold an airplane, they bought another airplane. They sold a piece of art, they bought a piece of art. They sold farm equipment, they bought farm equipment. I did an exchange here in San Jose many years ago where the guy sold a UPS delivery route, moved to Sacramento and bought a FedEx delivery route. That was a like-kind exchange. But what happened was in 2017, Congress completely eliminated all 1031 exchanges except for real estate. So now we no longer have these personal property exchanges. Now 1031 is only about real estate. And so don't get hung up on that term like kind. Any kind of investment real estate, commercial, for residential, for agricultural, for industrial, for farm, for bare land, all okay. Anywhere in the United States. Much more flexible than most people think. But I did say it has to be investment real estate. So what kind of real estate is not investment real estate? Well, not personal property, you mean primary residence, right? Where you live. Where you live has a completely different tax rule, right? When you sell your primary residence, you get an automatic exemption. If you're single, you get to keep $250,000 of profit tax-free. If you're married, you get to keep $500,000 of profit tax-free. Now, that was a lot of money back in 1997 when that law came into effect. But now many people have gained way in excess of that. Now, so many of you here are new realtors. Some of you are very young, and you may not know that this was not the way the law always was. It used to be when I sold my house and I didn't want to pay taxes, I had to go buy another house. And as long as I kept buying a more expensive house, I was avoiding the taxes. That used to be called a 1034 exchange. Now, we have not had that law since 1997. Now, that seems like a long time ago, but there are a lot of people around here who've owned their house 30 years or more, and they still think that's the rule, but not anymore. So now when someone sells a primary residence, it does not matter if they go buy another primary residence. It does not matter what they do with that money. If their gain is within that $250,000 or if they're married within that $500,000 of gain, they get to keep all of it. It doesn't matter what they do with the money. But if the gain is more, they pay taxes. So if they have $1 million of gain and it's a married couple, they get to keep the first $500,000. They have to pay tax on the other $500,000. Now, again, that was a lot of money back when that law came into effect in 1997. But now I read something that says 64% of all the houses in the Bay Area, the gain on that property is more than the exemption. So we have a lot of people out there who feel trapped because they do not want to sell property and pay a lot of taxes. So first question, can a property be both an investment property and a primary residence at the same time? Give me an example. ADU, duplex. Make it seem more simple. Duplex. I live on one side, rent out the other. I live in the front house and I have an ADU in the backyard. Does anybody here have a home office? Yeah. What percentage of your house is home office? Do you know what percentage that is about? 20%? Now, are you single or married? Okay, I'm not asking you for a date. Don't worry. The reason I bring that up though is, if you have a listing appointment with her and you know that she's as a single woman, she gets to keep her first $250,000, and you look, well, she bought this house back then, it's worth about this now. You know what? She has way more than $250,000 of gain in the property. Well, she may not know that she could take 20% of her sales price and do an exchange with it because she qualifies, because 20% of her property qualifies as investment property today. So I strongly recommend whenever you have a listing appointment and you think somebody has had the property, has more gain in the property than their exemption, ask the question: do you have an ADU? Do you rent out any of their property? I was about to say, I hope you have more batteries. We are on mic number 3, just in case you're keeping count. We'll see how many they actually have. Okay. So ask the question, because most people don't realize that they could take that if the property is if they have a home office, and this is the important part, they have to be declared on their tax return. Because a lot of us, like me, I have a home office, but I don't declare it on my tax return, because I don't qualify for it, because mine doesn't qualify. So I don't have a home office. But if you do, if you're showing it to the IRS, that's an important thing to realize. Now, the truth is, most of us do not have home offices. Most of us do not have ADUs. We do not show any part of our house to be investment property. So if you're dealing with somebody who has maybe millions of dollars of gain in their primary residence, what's a strategy for them? Move out. Turn your house into a rental property. Literally, as I came in today, I got an email from a woman. We're setting up her exchange. She just told me she had lived in the house 28 years. They just moved out 2 years ago, and it's been rented for the last 2 years. Now she's selling the property. The property is going to sell for $3 million. So at the close of escrow, they get to keep $500,000 right off the top, and then they could do an exchange on the remaining 2.5. So it's a way to combine the 1031 with the primary residence exemption. Now, note, this does not work for everybody. If you need the money from your house to go buy a bigger house, it doesn't work. But if you have the ability to go live somewhere else, or go buy another house, or move in with your kids, or many times they're moving into a retirement community, then this is a good strategy. So if you have somebody who has a highly appreciated primary residence and they feel trapped by it because they don't want to write a check that's in 6 or sometimes 7 figures to the government in taxes, this is a strategy. And I probably set up a couple of these every single week. It's a very common thing people are doing these days, where they're moving out of their property, converting to a rental. The other thing to remember is you are not just reinvesting the excess gain, you are reinvesting the entire sales price minus the exemption. So if the property sells for $5 million and they're single, they get to keep $250,000. They have to do an exchange on the remaining $4.75 million. Okay, so it's the entire sales price minus the exemption is how much they need to exchange to defer the rest of their taxes.
So one question, is it paid off property, or is it still, the mortgage is still going on?
Whether the question is whether there's a mortgage, does it matter if there's a mortgage involved? The answer, it does not matter if there's a mortgage involved or not. We'll talk about mortgage in just a minute, but ultimately all we really care about as far as the exchange goes is the sales price of the property, regardless of whether there's a mortgage on it. We'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. Okay. All right. Any questions about primary residences? All right. Yes.
They have a rental property, they want to sell that and buy another one. Rental property, there's no problem. what happens if that one becomes not residential, not a rental?
Okay, so her question.
I got you.
4. Okay, it's working now. I will say that we're learning our lessons about panel discussions here, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, I'm sorry. Your question again.
The rental property.
Okay, yes.
They sell it.
So your question is, and this is actually a fairly common strategy people have, where they want to buy a property that later they're going to move into, or later they're going to convert the property. So the first thing to remember is, in an exchange, what you sell and what you buy both have to be investment. So the question is, if I wanted to rent it, how long do I have to rent it for before I can move into the property? And the first answer is, there is no answer. There is nothing you will find in the tax code or from the IRS that will answer that directly. Period. End of sentence. It does not exist. You can Google it to high heaven. It does not exist. Now, that said, most accountants recommend renting out the property at least 2 years. So now again, are you going to find that in the tax code anywhere? No. So ultimately, it's a question they need to have with their own tax person. But most are going to recommend at least a couple of years before they move into the property. Now, in answer to something you just asked, though, one important thing here is there is no tax due when they move into the property. So converting the property to a primary residence does not trigger a tax. But what will happen is, if they ever sell the property, now they're going to have to pay some taxes. From A, B, and C, yes. So all the depreciation they've taken, all has to be paid back. And they only get to keep a proration of the capital gain up to the exemption. And so the idea here is that the idea of using the 1031 as a strategy, where I'm going to go buy a property that maybe I'm going to retire in, or I'm going to live there for a very long time, that's a good tax strategy. But if their goal is, I just want to do an exchange, I'm going to move into it for 2 years and then sell it, that's a bad tax strategy, because they're going to end up paying most of the gain in taxes anyway. Okay, so any more questions about primary residences? Any questions online? No, we're good. Okay. Okay. Second homes. Now, second homes we think of as that little house in Lake Tahoe or in Hawaii or in Santa Cruz that your clients go to on weekends. Not you, because you're realtors. You can't go. Now, the question is a second home. I got another backup already. I'm ready, just in case. All right. So the question is, second homes are not investment real estate. Second homes are considered property for personal use, and therefore do not qualify. Now, if you ever sell a second home, you pay taxes on all of the gain. So all of the gain is none of it. It's not a primary residence, so you don't get the 250, 500,000. It's not an investment, so you can't do a 1031. So whatever the profit is on a second home, you pay taxes on. Now, most of you think, well, it's okay. None of my family has a second home in San Jose. Oh, yeah, they do. There are a lot of second homes. There are a lot of second homes in the area. You know why? Because they're letting their children live there, or worse, their parents. I say worse because for a family member to be considered a renter, they have to pay market rate rent. And if they're not paying market rate rent and you're letting a family live in the property, it's considered to be a second home. It does not qualify for 1031. So that's an important thing to note, is if you know anybody who is letting family member live in the property rent-free or for very little rent, then at this point it does not qualify as investment real estate, and therefore does not qualify for 1031. The property needs to be something that they treat the property as a regular tenant. So that's where you have to be very careful with second homes. Yes.
Actually, we wanted to do that. We have a house in Sacramento, sell it, and then buy a house or an apartment for my son in San Jose, and let him stay there, and that will be our second home. And he's going to pay the rent to us.
So the idea, so your question is, you want to do an exchange where you want to sell your Sacramento rental, buy a house here that your son is going to live in. So the first thing is you have to have a lease with him, and as long as he's paying market rate rent, and you're showing the property on your tax return as a rental property, then that's perfectly okay.
Okay.
Yes.
And till how long? Just stay?
How long do you have to show it as investment? Again, that's a question for the tax professional. Most are going to recommend at least the first couple of years. After that, there's, for the least first couple of years, you want to be showing it as an investment. Yes. Okay. All right. By the way, I will note also vacation rentals do qualify. So if you have somebody who has an Airbnb or VRBO, that type of property, that does qualify. I will say, though, that the IRS has a very strict definition of vacation rental. I have a client, he called me up. He has a property in near Hilo, Hawaii. He goes there for 4 months of the year and then rents out the other 8 months. In the eyes of the IRS, that's not a vacation rental because he lives there. He goes there too much himself. He can only be there up to 2 weeks per year, and in the eyes of the IRS, and still call it have it be a vacation rental that qualifies the property as investment real estate.
And that is within the US, it cannot be outside.
It has to, and right, this is all only within the United States, right? Right. 1031 federal law. It's within the United States, anywhere in the United States, but it's U.S. to U.S. Technically, you can exchange foreign real estate for other foreign real estate, but it's virtually impossible. It's very, very difficult to do that. Very difficult. And most exchange companies will not work with you, mostly because of the banking regulations and what do you call it? Where you're trying to get away with money laundering laws. The money laundering laws makes it very difficult. So as far as we are concerned, U.S. to U.S. only, yes. But here again, vacation rentals do qualify as long as they meet a very strict definition of how much they need to rent the property versus how much they can use it, personal use, etc. By the way, if you want more details on any one particular topic, I have a one-page PDF on almost everything. So if there's any one topic you want to hear more about, let me know. Or your clients have a specific situation about vacation rentals or about primary residence or moving into the rental, I have a one-page PDF on just about everything. So happy to share it with you.
Do Airbnbs qualify?
Airbnb is considered a vacation rental. Yes, as long as you meet the IRS definition of vacation rental, whether it's Airbnb, VRBO, however you rent it out. Yes, it does qualify. Okay. All right. Let's move on. There's one other kind of property to discuss: flips. You buy a beat-up old house, you fix it up, and you sell it. That is not considered to be investment real estate. That's considered to be property held for development or property held for resale. Okay, I always liken a flip to going to the grocery store. You go to Safeway to buy a can of soup. That soup is not investment. That soup is inventory. They bought it from Campbell's and they're selling it to you at a profit. They buy a chicken, they cut the head off, they wrap it in plastic, and they sell it to you. That's a fixer-upper. They bought it, they fixed it up, and they sold it to you. That is considered to be property held for resale, not investment. So, as a rule, as residential agents, primarily you are looking at rental property. Now, bare land. So if you got somebody who's selling a lot, that qualifies. If you are dealing with somebody who runs a business in commercial property, that qualifies. But for most residential uses, primarily we're talking rental property. Okay. All right. Let's move on now to the process of the 1031. You are newer. Most of you are newer agents. So someone comes to you and says, "I want to do a 1031 exchange. I want you to list the property for me, and I'm going to do a 1031 exchange." My first words of wisdom to you are, don't panic. Everything about your listing is exactly like any other listing. Same listing agreement, same MLS, same tour, same purchase contract, same title company, same absolutely everything. There are only 3 things I want you to do extra if your client's going to do an exchange. Number 1, please make sure they know what they're doing. And I don't care if they Googled it. Or worse, ask ChatGPT. There's so much bad information out there that they need to talk to a professional. I got brochures. I got this in 10 different languages. Client is welcome to call me. The key here is we want to make sure the client understands the rules. When someone calls me who's brand new to 1031, I will say that more than half of the time, they have at least one very serious misunderstanding of the rules. Okay, that I needed to educate them about. So please make sure the client knows what they're talking. Don't assume they do, especially if they Googled it, they figure they know what they're doing. No, it can be most of the time it's very simple, but it can get complex. Bottom line. Again, make sure the client is educated about exchanges. One thing I will also mention to you, especially you as newer agents, do not ever feel that you have to become experts in 1031. Okay? You are not experts in termites. You are not experts in loans. You are not experts in escrow. Okay? You have your team of people that help you with that. You want to work with it. You want to have an intermediary on your team also that helps you answer those questions. Do not feel that you have to ever become experts in this stuff. I don't care if you're in this business 30 years. You will never become experts in 1031 because you don't deal with it every day like we do. All right. So number one, then you want to educate the client. Number two, there is something you put in the purchase contract. Does anybody know what you put in the purchase contract? It's often referred to as the cooperation clause. Sometimes you'll see seller to do 1031 exchange, or in the listing notes they'll say, buyer to cooperate with seller's 1031 exchange. All that is a disclosure. So it does need, I don't care if it's in the MLS, it does need to be in the purchase contract. Now the key here is it is a disclosure. It is not a contingency. It does not give your seller the unilateral right to change any terms. All this says is the seller is doing an exchange, and the reason that's in there is because our role as the intermediary is to literally step into the contract. And because we're stepping into the contract, both parties need to know about it. But it has no impact on the buyer. Part two of this also is that the has no impact on the buyer. The other aspect to that is that if you don't know what to put, there's something called the SXA, the Seller's Intent to Exchange Addendum. So you can use that also. Again, so often you'll see in the comment section, buyer to cooperate with seller's 1031. That's fine. If you aren't sure what to put, you can use the SXA form. All right. So educate the client, disclosure to the buyer, and number three, please remember to call the intermediary before escrow closes. If escrow closes and you do not have the intermediary on board, escrow will send the money to the title company and they will pay taxes. So the exchange company has to be involved before escrow closes, so that part of what they do is they give the directions to escrow that the money has to be released to them, not to the seller. Otherwise, everything about your transaction is exactly the same. Now, escrow is now closed. How long do you have to buy the next property?
60 days or 90 days?
45 days is one number. What's the other number? 180. 45 days to identify, to tell us what you're going to purchase, 180 days to actually buy it. Now, what does identify mean? Identify means you give us a list of up to 3 property addresses. Now, if you're going to buy more than 3, there are ways of identifying more than 3, but for the most part, you can identify up to 3 properties. Now, when I say identify, I mean you give us the exact address, not a house in San Jose. It has to be the exact address, the exact unit number. So that is what you are identifying. Now, when it comes to identifying, the issue here is that you cannot change your mind after the 45 days. So technically, do you have to be in contract by the 45 days? Technically, no. Technically, you've given us a list of 3 properties, but if on day 46, all 3 of those properties get sold to somebody else, you're out of luck. You're screwed. And so the reality is you really want to be in contract by day 45. I always tell people what your goal should be is by day 45, you want to be in contract. inspections done, loan approved. You want to be locked into a property by the time you get to the 45 days.
And you have to select within those.
Because you have to select from within those three, exactly. So that's why it's better to be. I mean, the mentality you should have is you want to be locked into a property by day 45. Now you have 180 days to close it, but the truth is, unless you're dealing with a large commercial property or you're dealing with new construction, that 180 days is almost never an issue. That 45-day clock really is the critical one. Okay. By the way, when does that 45-day clock start? At the close of escrow. Here's one question. Here's something I'm going to suggest to you. If you have a client who is worried about not finding a property in those 45 days, ask for longer escrows. Okay? I love seeing 45, 60-day escrow or a 30-day escrow with an option to extend 30 days. The longer before escrow closes, the longer before the 45-day clock starts. Because once it starts, there ain't no stopping it. No extensions, no exceptions, no excuses. All right. I will say at this point also that there is something called a reverse exchange where you buy first and then sell, because I've seen many situations where people are looking for a specific kind of property or a specific location of property, and they just don't think one's going to become available during any just random 45-day period. And so because of that, there is a way where you buy first and then sell your property. It's a more complicated, more expensive transaction, but there is a way to do it. Bottom line is, if you have a client in that situation where they want to buy first and then sell, call me or call the intermediary and go over how the rules are, because it is a more complicated transaction, but it does exist.
And who is the intermediary?
The intermediary is us. Our job is we're referred to sometimes as accommodators or facilitators. Our technical term is qualified intermediaries. And again, our job is to hold the money between when the property is sold and the property is purchased. That's all we do. Is we are a neutral third party. We cannot act in any other financial capacity. We cannot be their realtor, their accountant, their attorney, their lender, their mother. I mean, we are a neutral third party to them. And our entire job solely is to hold the funds between when they sell and when they buy. I call us the escrow between the escrows. Exactly.
So there is a charge for that.
There is a charge for that. It's very small. It's $1,000. We charge $1,000 when the property is sold, and $250 when you buy the new property. So it's a very nominal. Qualified intermediary is the technical term. Sometimes you'll see QI. That's what it's called. Okay. Yes.
Given a situation, seller owns a commercial property that has been rented out for years. They now want to sell the property and purchase a different commercial property that they want to move their own business into. Can they do that through a 1031 exchange? Then there is a third commercial property where they currently house their business. And that building will be sold also. Is there a way to shelter those proceeds?
So the answer is yes. First off, the fact that it's an owner-occupied building for business purposes, that's fine. Okay, we talked about primary residences. Primary residences don't want to qualify because that's where they live. But if you want to buy a building where you're running your business from, yes, that qualifies for 1031. So that aspect is fine. Now there's a couple of unanswered questions in there. Obviously, if they're looking to sell two properties to buy one, that's okay. Also, the timing needs to be worked out because the 45-day clock starts when the first one closes escrow. So I'm not sure if they're looking to sell two. I will say in a situation like theirs, frequently we will do a reverse exchange, if only because they want to buy the new property, move their operation, and then sell theirs afterwards. So there are lots of different ways that we can do those transactions, but ultimately, does it qualify? Absolutely, and we just need to work on the timing a little bit.
If the client purchases the new commercial property in the name of the trust, and then the business rents the commercial space from the trust, will that work through the
The key in an exchange is it has to be the same taxpayer selling and buying. So if the trust is what is the trust or the underlying owners of the trust are who's selling, and that's who's buying, that's fine. If their corporation is selling, but they want the trust to buy, then we have an issue. It has to be the same taxpayer selling and buying. But they do need to sell first and then buy. If they want to buy first, they cannot have their trust buy the property and then have their company buy it from the trust. There are issues with what's referred to as related parties. And so that's where we'd have to be careful about that one. So this is one where I'd love to talk to the client more specifically about their details. Ultimately, it sounds like they can do what they want to do. It's just that the timing on the whole thing is going to be a little bit tricky. Okay. All right. So we talked about any questions about the 45 days, 180 days? The timeline is far and away the most important thing here, because many people, when people fail their exchange, it's almost always because they did not successfully find a property within their 45 days. All right. Next one, how much do you need to spend in the exchange to defer all your taxes? And the answer is very simple, all of it. A lot of people think that you just need to reinvest the equity or the gain. No. If the property sells for $1 million, they need to go buy for at least $1 million. I'll get to your loan in just a minute. Now, can they buy for more than $1 million? Yes, there's no limit. They can buy up as much as they want. Can they buy multiple properties that add up to $1 million? Yes, just like the person asked the question earlier. They want to sell for $1 million, buy 5 properties at $200,000. That's perfectly fine, as long as in total they add up to the $1 million. Now, can they buy for less than $1 million? The answer is yes, but they pay tax on the difference. What is that difference called? It's capital gains, but there's an actual term we use within 1031. It's referred to as boot. Sometimes you will hear people talk about boot. Boot is what you pay tax on. So if the property sells for $1 million and you only buy something for $900,000, there's $100,000 of boot. Boot they pay capital gains tax on. Yes. So is the exchange still valid? Yes, but they just pay tax on whatever they don't reinvest. And I will also note that you can subtract the closing costs. So realtor fees and escrow fees can be factored in. So if the property sells for $1 million and after paying a realtor and transfer tax and escrow fees, the net sales price is $950. $950 becomes their target price. Again, if they buy more, fine. If they buy less, they pay tax on the difference. Now, let's assume there's a loan on the property. Let's assume the net sales price on the property is $1 million and there's a $200,000 loan. That $200,000 loan is going to get paid off at the close of escrow. So what's going to come into the exchange is the $800,000. All $800,000 needs to be used as down payment on the next property. They can't put 20% down and get an $800,000 loan. No, they have to use all of that equity towards the next property. But the loan also has to be made up, either with another loan or with cash from their pocket. Because if they sell for $1 million, they still need to buy for $1 million. We're holding $800,000, but they still have to make up that $200,000 somehow. Most people they're just going to get another loan to make up that difference, though they can use cash from their own pocket. A lot of people think you have to get a loan to replace a loan, and that's not correct. You can replace a loan with money, with your own money, but you can't do it the other way around. Any cash left over, even if you buy something more expensive, if you have cash left over in the exchange, you pay tax on that. So the way I like to look at it, you want to buy equal or greater in value and use all the equity, use all the cash. Equal or greater, use all the cash. As long as you're doing that, you're deferring all of your taxes. Okay? Any questions about the dollars? Because that is the one, I guarantee you, that's the one people always get confused. They always think they only have to reinvest their equity or the profit. No, they have to reinvest everything. Okay? In a nutshell, that's the 1031 exchange. You're selling investment real estate, you're buying investment real estate. You got to know what you're going to go buy within 45 days. You got to spend all the money. But as long as you're doing that, you're deferring all your taxes. Now, there are a few what I call red flag areas, a few areas to be careful about within 1031. The first one we touched upon earlier is family or any kind of related parties. Anytime anybody wants to do something where they're buying and selling within a 1031 exchange, they want to buy or sell among a related party, then that's a problem. A couple of examples. Family. Parents, children, siblings are related to you. A very common question I have is someone wants to do a 1031 exchange and buy their kid's house from them because their kids are falling behind on the mortgage. Or maybe the parents want to move and they don't want to lose their family house, so they want to do an exchange and buy the parents' house from them. You cannot do that. Period. End of sentence. It will not work. IRS will blow up that exchange immediately. So those are the kinds of things where you're buying from a related party, especially a family relation. It's a problem. The question that was asked online earlier, what a common thing people will do with companies is they'll say, well, I'll have my one company buy the property and then I'll buy from my company. No, you can't do that. You and your company are related to each other. So anytime you're dealing with any kind of close relationship, whether it's family relationship or corporate relationship, there are very strict rules to follow. Now, I'm not saying you can never do it, but I'm saying we need to go over the individual specific situation because there are a lot of restrictions on that. Yes?
Are you just saying basically that if someone wanted to buy a property for the 1031 exchange from a family member, that's usually for the buyer?
Correct. Right. Correct. And if you're as part of an exchange, you want to buy a replacement property from a family member, from a close family member, cousins and uncles, we don't care about, just a close family member, then yeah, almost always it's going to get blown up. And the reason I always get to say, well, my sister has a different last name than I do. Yeah, but the tax form specifically asks, did you buy replacement property from a related party? So unless you want to commit tax fraud, you have to check the box yes. So you're basically telling the IRS what you did. So it's almost impossible to get away with it. So number two thing to be careful about, seller financing. I know seller financing isn't huge in urban areas like ours here. It's very common with commercial real estate. It's also very common for rural areas. Seller financing and 1031s don't mix. Seller financing and 1031. Seller financing is, well, that note that you carry back for the client is almost always going to be considered taxable boot. So be very careful about that. Third thing to be careful about, divorcing couples. I hate talking to divorcing couples because divorcing couples always want to do the same thing. They want to sell and each buy their own properties. The problem is they're still married. And so as long as they are still married, it's very difficult to do an exchange into separate properties. So divorcing couples, very much a problem. Foreign sellers and buyers. Foreign sellers can do exchanges. That's okay. So I've done exchanges for people who've never once stepped inside the United States. But the foreign sellers are most likely going to be subject to what's called FIRPTA, which is the foreign person's withholding that escrow has to do. It could be as much as 15% of the sales price. Also, they must have U.S. tax ID or Social Security number. It could be a temporary one, but they do need to have a tax ID number. So the reason I'm bringing this to your attention, if you're dealing with somebody who is not a U.S. citizen or permanent residence, let both the exchange company and the title company know up front. There's extra paperwork. There are extra hoops for them to jump through. Can they do an exchange? Yes, but it does get more complicated. Next thing to be careful about is who owns the property, the vesting, who owns. So here in Santa Clara County, whenever you have a new listing, you call your favorite title company and you open escrow, right? The escrow officer is going to give you this magical document called a prelim. Please read it. Look who's on title to the property. Make sure that's who's sitting across the table from you. Because if they want to do any change to who that ownership is, that's a problem. Now, it does not have to be the exact same vesting, but it has to be the same owner. So for example, you and your revocable trust are the same taxpayer because the revocable trust does not file a separate tax return. It's what's called a disregarded entity. So you can like sell in your name, buy in your trust, or vice versa. That's fine, but it does need to be the same taxpayer, right? So if Grace is selling, Grace has to buy. She can't give the money to her daughter to buy the replacement property. Similarly, where it becomes an issue here is when people own real estate with other people. I got a phone call from a client. She's here. Her father's in Pennsylvania. He wants to sell a property that's in a partnership. Well, guess what? Who owns the property? The partnership. Who wants to do the exchange? Just the father. Can't do it. because it's changing who the taxpayer is. So that's so even adding a spouse could be a problem. If you bought the property when you're single, now you want to sell the property sell the property as a single person, but buy the replacement as a married couple, even that could be a problem. So any change to who the underlying exchanger is from what's being sold to what's being purchased, again, call me, call the intermediary, and we'll walk through the process because that can mess things up. All right. All right. I got a couple more minutes, so let me. Any more questions?
Equity can be added once the property is bought?
Once the exchange is over, we don't care anymore as far as the exchange goes. So again, I'm never a big fan of adding your children onto title for no reason, or adding your spouse, though. That's a very common thing. Yeah, so it's you selling, you buying, and adding your spouse afterwards. That's a pretty common thing to do. Yes, but so all we see is it's the same spouse selling and buying. As soon as the escrow's closed, that's the end of the exchange. After that, you can do whatever you want. All right. So let me spend any more last questions online here before I go into the last part of it? Okay. Why do people do 1031 exchanges? Do save taxes, the wrong answer. The easiest way to save taxes? Don't sell it. As long as I'm not selling the property, I'm not paying taxes. What? Well, I mean, you could hold on to it if you can, but the reason people do exchanges is because they want to buy something better. Now, what does better mean? Better means whatever the client wants it to be. It could be, I want better cash flow. It could be, I want something easier to manage. It could be, I want to sell 3 properties to buy one. Yeah, I want to sell one big to buy 3 small. It could be, I'm moving my business from one location to the other, so I need a bigger location, or maybe I need a smaller location. Maybe I want to buy a property that my grandkids can live in, or could go to a better school district. Or maybe I want to buy a property that that ultimately I want to move into myself and retire. Again, you do an exchange because you want to buy something different from what you own today. And you're usually doing it because you want to buy something that meets your needs that this current property does not have. Okay? Her kid does not want to live in Sacramento. Her kid wants to live in San Jose. So she wants to do exchange to San Jose because that's where he lives. So the reason I bring this to your attention is that when you talk to people when you talk to investors about their rental property, don't focus on just deferring taxes. Nobody wants to pay taxes. Focus on, what do you want out of your real estate? What are you trying to get to? Are you trying to get something? Are you trying to get better cash flow? Are you trying to expand your real estate and network and buy bigger properties? Are you trying to find something easier to manage because now you're retired? What are you looking for out of your real estate? 1031 is the tool that gets you from what you own today to what you want to own tomorrow. Very powerful tool. But if you think of it that way, though, now you're thinking more about what do you want out of your real estate, and that's what we can do for you. Yes.
So that property is giving a good rental income. So really, do we really need to do the 1031 exchange? That's the big.
I mean, your question. Yeah. So your question is, the property that you have today is making good rental income. Is it a smart idea to exchange that into something that's going to get you less income? I don't know. That's a decision you have to make. I mean, what's more important? I see a lot of people exchanging for things that may not. I mean, why on earth would anybody ever do an exchange into Palo Alto? They probably have a really good reason, but from a cash flow point of view, it's usually a pretty bad idea. But people do it. They're eventually going to move into it, or their kids are, or some. They must have a good reason. Maybe they just want to do appreciation and they don't care about cash flow. So there are reasons people do things, and so again, that's the key: is what do you want? What is your motivation? Just again, the exchange gets you from here to there. All right.
What does your IPX stand for?
Our company is it's called Investment Property Exchange, or IPX 1031. That's our company.
What do you think? Is that a good idea or not?
Don't ask me about my idea. I do exchanges for people all over the country for all sorts of reasons. Nobody tells me why they do it. So, if you We could talk a little bit afterwards. We could talk some ideas. All right. Last thing before I wrap up, because we're running, our hours are running out. I do want to reiterate one thing I said earlier. Do not ever feel you have to become experts in 1031, especially you as newer agents. Okay, there's a lot to learn in your business, and you might have your next listing be a 1031, or it might be 5 years before you have one. Kelly over at that runs their Sereno office. Her and I started almost at the exact same time in the business. It was almost 10 years before she did her first exchange, but you never know. But so don't ever expect to become experts in this. But you want to know it exists. You want to know when to bring in an intermediary to help your clients get their questions answered. But don't feel that you have to be that expert. Lastly, I do have a newsletter I put out on 1031 and tax-related information. Comes out once a month. If you're interested, give me your card. I'll add you to it. I don't sell your information. I don't bombard you with stuff. Again, once a month and you're welcome to use that information for your own marketing. So you're welcome to do that. I do have brochures and cards I will hand out to people here when we are done as well. One last call for any questions. In that case, we only needed 4 microphones today. That's not too bad. And thank you to SCORE very much for having me today. I've been a member here for 25 years, and it's one of the places I will always be a member of because I just enjoy this organization very much.